Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for watching. I'd like to thank Sky News and Paul Murray for giving Clive Palmer the opportunity to put forward his case. He has done a great job, Paul Murray, and Clive Palmer. It looks like he's the only hope Australia has, because the two major parties are, man, they're bad. They're bad. They don't give us stuff about Australia. But Clive Palmer, at least he's got the right ideas to get us out of the mire. So have a look at this. It's a good video. Share it, guys, and support him, because Labour is going to get back in again, and there's nowhere to hide. They're pathetic, and our lives are destroyed. We're tenants on our own property. Councils have gone wild, crazy, making up laws, view taxes. Oh my God. We need help. So Clive Palmer might be the answer. Like him or not, it doesn't matter. Let's try and help. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye for now.
Staying up late for us this evening is the man who has brought the trumpet of patriots to the Australian political sphere, none other than the great Clive Palmer. Lovely to see you, mate. Canberra, what a fun time of year this is as they piddle our money up against the wall.
Well, you're right, Paul, and we should talk about solutions. I think we've got solutions for the problems you mentioned, especially the $1 trillion of debt. We can deal with that very effectively. You know, China's become a major manufacturing superpower, conquering export markets in Europe, the United States, everywhere else, on the back of Australian iron ore. 90% of exports of imports of China's iron ore comes from the Pilbara. All we need to do is put a 15% licence fee on that, and that money can pay off the debt for us. We'd much rather have them do it than have the taxpayers do it. So that's an easy fix. We did it in the 1960s. We had a licence fee on our iron ore. We can do it again. Why shouldn't we participate in the supply chain? So why shouldn't we do that? Every other country in the world's done that. If you go to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, every other predominant country which has virtually got a monopoly in minerals takes that advantage for their people. But our politicians are too weak to do it. Yeah. So that solves the debt crisis for you in one slice.
Yeah, there wouldn't be a barbecue that doesn't get everyone's head nodding when we say, geez, we all pay too much tax. Gross income tax, again, from those that pay as you go. This year, $310 billion. Next year, $327 billion. The next year, $346 billion. The year after that, $368 billion. Now, okay, tax cuts here, how do we change this system where the single greatest source of revenue for the federal government is the man, woman and child that is out and about doing their bit for 40 hours a week?
Well, it shouldn't be. It should be shared fairly across the community, across corporate taxation, and multinationals dealing in our country should pay a fair part of the burden. So it's just a question of us being realistically restoring what the tax should be in this country. But if we are smart, use our assets correctly, we don't need as much tax. We don't need to expand the budget the way we have. We don't need as many public servants, as Jane said. I mean, there wouldn't be one public servant in Australia that knows his life couldn't be more productive. He couldn't be doing more, and he wouldn't be better appreciated if we reformed the public service. We certainly need to do that. If you look what Elon Musk's done in the United States, he's found $5 trillion of the US budget, and he wants to return $8,000 to each American citizen because they've been getting ripped off for years and years by the bureaucracy. You know, we've got $5 trillion worth of super, but you see Kevin Rudd and the Prime Minister going to Washington and say, oh, invest in the United States. And yet the Australian government gives people a concession tax to put their money into super. You think what would go with that, some of that should be vested in Australia to develop our resources rather than have our capital coming from the United States and from China when we're the second biggest super tranche in the world. I mean, that will create jobs, industry, growth and exports. And instead of exporting, say, iron ore at $100 a tonne, you can export steel at $2,000 a tonne. That'll fix our balance of payments. I mean, none of these people have got any experience in business, international trade. I mean, I've got $23 billion in assets. That's my life's work. I don't think Elbow's got that. We've got over $3 billion of exports every year. We've made that happen. There's nobody in Treasury that's done that. And it's not these sort of public service policies. 99% of Liberal and Labor policies are the same. Why? Because they come from the one source, the bureaucracy. They don't come from individuals. We haven't got our best people making our policies. And our people deserve that. We've got 3.7 million households in Australia that go to bed hungry. We can solve the housing crisis by having a fast train 120 kilometres outside of Sydney or the capital cities like they do in Tokyo and Yokohama, and develop some of our cheaper land and be 20-minute commute to the city. We can have the deposit for our homes from our super, and we can cap interest rates at 3% like they do for Fannie Mac and Fannie Mae in the United States. The government can use that strength to help its people. Australians should come first, not the government.
Well, and I've got to say, I heard you give a speech and I've heard you give interviews, and I love that one of the things you relentlessly bring up is the number of people that are going hungry. As you know, that number, 3.7 million people, food banks the source, right? Not some
households.
Yeah, these are households, so it gets even more. It's more than people, isn't it? Yeah, it's just the number of households that don't know where their food comes from this week. You're the only person with access to a microphone and a camera who brings this up. Tonight was an opportunity for the federal government to say, this is not on, we will change it, but it's you and I talking way after the rest of them are off, to sink tins at the pub.
Well, it's $200 million to fix the problem, to feed hungry Australians. Yet the Australian government, Albanese, gives $1 million a year to Food Bank. And those people work hard with getting food out to hungry Australians. We don't want Labor, Liberal, Greens, whoever they are as Australians, we don't want them and their children not being able to eat in our country. How bad's politics got in this country if we can't protect our own citizens and feed the people that live here? It's a disgrace. And why is it happening? Because of higher interest rates. And that's why it's happening. But we said before the last election what was going to happen, and it's happened. But now we've got to have compassion for the people. You imagine your children, Paul, going to bed hungry at night. And of course, a lot of the children are not. The parents are the ones that are giving up their food for the children, having one meal a day. They're struggling to keep their houses. We've got increased immigration that's coming in. The banks are taking people's houses. And we've got 120,000 homeless Australians in this country. And all we need to do is use our resources correctly and turn it around. It's our party that is the alternative government, that's got the alternative policies. It's not the Liberal and Labor uniparty, which get the same policy ideas from the same bureaucrats every year. The budget has the same headings every year. It's just upped and changed and manipulated. We need massive changes across the board, and we need to have it. I've laid that out in the press club pretty clearly what needs to be done. And I've got no personal interest in this. I'm 71 years old. You know, I had a successful business life, but I can help this country and I want to see us prosper. I'm an Australian. I'm living here. My children are living here. I want a better country.
Last question. Let me get in before inevitably everyone on breakfast television does it, and that's what becomes the news today. How do you feel about $5 that'll come your way, because every taxpayer is going to get it? How do you feel, and what's your message to the Prime Minister and Treasurer about $5? What will you be doing with your extra $5 a week?
I just say he's a Scrooge, you know. $5 to solve Australia's problems to every citizen's a bloody insult. He should stick it up his khyber. That's what I say with his $5. What a ridiculous situation to say, here's $5, your power bill's going up $1,000. You're losing your home, but here's $5. Everything will be right. Vote for the Labor Party or vote for the Liberal Party. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. Everything that Labor said they'll do, what does Peter Dutton said? We'll match it. That means he thinks it's a good idea. He should be saying, that's a crazy idea. We're not going to match it. We've got a better idea. He doesn't say that. He just says, we'll match it. We'll match it. I don't want a Labor government. I don't want a Liberal government. I want an Australian government fighting for the people.
All right, and the Trumpet of Patriots is the party that you will have on the battlefield in 150 seats and all the Senates and all the rest of it. Thank you, Clive. Do appreciate it. We'll talk again soon, mate. You know, on this show, we ignore the spin, we ignore the garbage, we ignore what the Canberra Collective will tell us is what we have to think about a budget, and we can think for ourselves. That's why you watch this show and why I'm so grateful to have sat here for 15 years and counting. Now, last year, we knew that the budget that was delivered by Jim Chalmers, which predicted more people will lose their job, that happened. Remember, 53,000 people lost their job in January alone, a football stadium of people. And there will be plenty of people inside the Canberra media who will go out and do the bidding for this government. For example, right now on the 9 News website, billions in cost of living relief. Oh, it's all extra money. No reference of a deficit, no reference to the country being in deficit until the Jetsons becomes reality. But of course, whatever they hand out, they are just replacing fractions of what they have already taken away. Remember, in one of his first decisions as Treasurer, they removed $1,500 from 10 million workers. This was the low to middle income offset, and it meant during the COVID years that there was a guaranteed $1,500 tax return for 10 million workers. That disappeared, meaning you were $1,500 poorer than the budget before as a result of the decisions of this government. And we also know that surveys showed us that more than 7 out of 10 Australian voters couldn't mention a single thing this government has done to make their lives financially better. This is after the budget, when they first came to power, after the budget, when they wanted us to talk about the voice, after the budget, with too little, too late tax cuts, that, remember, I said on budget night, forget the big number about annual savings. You pay your tax weekly, fortnightly or monthly. And for people who are on $40,000, $12 a week doesn't touch the sides of all of the things that have got worse under this government, let alone what, of course, they promised to do better when it comes to budget savings. But again, despite the fact that the reality for the lowest income workers amongst us is $12 a week benefit, they fell for the spin. They fell for the big numbers. They wanted it to be a reset for a government in trouble.
Tens of billions of dollars in cost of living relief is on the way tonight to Australians doing it tough.
Every Australian household and 1 million small businesses will get money off their power bills in tonight's federal budget.
There is money for just about everyone. On top of the tax cuts and energy assistance, pensioners will have the cost of scripts at the pharmacy frozen. Commonwealth rent assistance will jump for a second year.
So that's the spin. And it'll all be there tomorrow. And it'll take a couple of days for everyone else to catch up. But I say immodestly because we've got it right for 15 years in a row. I am confident in our ability to do it again tomorrow night, which is to cut right through and to tell you the reality, not the spin. To use the numbers in the real world, like weekly or fortnightly or monthly pay, not big annual numbers. Perfect example is, the supposed cut towards power bills. It's $25 a month. And it is for the biggest of mansions to the smallest of shacks. So none of that touches the sides. It's all just so they can say something going into an election, hoping they can use that great Jedi mind trick to somehow change your opinion about your own reality of the past 3 years. But I want to take a giant step back about whether this whole system and the way we report on it and the way that we dissect it is exactly the opposite of the way we should be looking at things. For as long as I've been sitting here and as long as you've been voting, politicians have tried to focus on budget night on the number of rubber duckies that they're going to give us so we can play and distract ourselves like little kids in a bath. But the reality is that I don't want to focus on the number of rubber duckies. I want to focus on the fact that the bath is overflowing. The bath is going to be overflowing all the way to when the Jetsons 2060s. And I also wanted to confirm something, or to double check, or to stress test something that many of us have felt over a long time, which is that government is getting bigger. It's in more parts of our lives. It takes more money. It spends more money. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger because they basically want a triangle of dependency. They want you to be dependent on the government when it comes to welfare, to be dependent on the government because you work for them, or if you're in business, for business to be the biggest client of government. And if they can lock in 60, 65, 75% of enough marginal or swing seats, well, then they get to govern forever. This is the type of logic that bankrupted Queensland, has bankrupted Victoria, where those state governments have been in place for the best part of 30 years. Thankfully, Queensland woke up and they're trying to do their best, well, to turn off the tap, not to reduce the total amount of water in the bath, but to guarantee there's not any more of this overflow. And in terms of debt, you know how bad things are in Victoria. But to do that, I had to have a look at a longer period of time, not just budget to budget, but era to era. And in all of our political lives, my media life, and in our voting lives, we all know that there's something fundamentally different about the government of John Howard and Peter Costello and the government of Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers. Now, they're going to argue that there's lots of cyclical things and there's a war in Ukraine and all the rest of it. No. let's compare the budget of 2004-5 to the budget of 2024-25, which was last year. You know those union super ads, compare the pair? Or maybe if you are much more online, it's how it started versus how it's going, and those memes. Now, to frame this conversation and to take you through this, I want you to know how many people have been added to the Australian population since the Howard Costello budget and the budget that was handed down last year. We went from 20 to 27 million people. That's an increase of 33%. If nothing else, put that number in your head. The population has grown by 33%. But if you have a look at the total amount of income tax and the total tax take, the Australian federal government has grown by a lot more than just 33%. Now, we even adjusted these figures for inflation, meaning we made sure that the value of the 2004 dollar was put into 2024 dollar value. And as you can see, the amount of money going into the government goes from $150 to $492 billion. That's up 96% in 20 years. What about the number even closer to 100% of the total tax take of $193 billion, now up to $643 billion? But you'll notice in both of those, the single biggest source of income for the federal government is you and me, the people who work for somebody else and the tax is taken out. It's done so monthly, and that's how we pay it over. An increase of 96 and 99%. That's the amount of revenue. The population has only grown by 33%. Well, obviously, we know this Prime Minister is the latest in a long line of them, and it's multiple Prime Ministers, it's multiple forms of government, being Team Red or Team Blue. But we know this Prime Minister getting ready for a budget that will be in deficit, the first of deficits that go all decade and all the way through the 2030s, the 2040s, the 2050s, into the 2060s. But he doesn't care about the 2060s. He only cares about the next 50 or so days before the election. So this is his promises that are about $40 billion so far this year.
A $7.2 billion announcement today. $5 million. $10 million. $200 million. $3 billion. $350 million. $2 billion. $37 million. $842 million. $2.4 billion. $8.5 billion. $4.8 billion. $1 billion. $3.4 billion.
Well, are you sitting down? Australia's population has only grown by 33% in the past 20 years. But federal government spending has increased by 128%. $192 billion has become $734 billion. Adjusting for inflation, the reason it's 128% and not, 7,000% is because we took the value of the 2005 dollar, compared it to the 2024 dollar. And even then, it is 4 times higher than the population of Australia. Now, there is a chance that perhaps the reason for the increase in spending is because the cost of things for a hospital has gone up or the cost of a tank has gone up. Okay, sure. But has it really gone up by 128% in 20 years? No. It's because governments of multiple stripes have baked things into the budget. So say in the Howard era, it'd be things like the family tax benefit. In the Gillard era, it'd be things like the NDIS. In this government, it is things like a building future made in Australia under the Rudd and Gillard. It's, of course, all things to do with clean energy that has all been supercharged under this government. But show that number again. The Australian population has only increased by 33%, yet the government spending has gone up 128.5% in the past 20 years. So, yeah, we are all frogs in a pot. And while they want to distract us with the rubber duckies, no, there's a problem with the bath. There's too much water overfilling, spilling onto the floor. And there are lots of places this money goes, like the total number of public servants that exist in Australia. Now, yes, technically speaking, A soldier could be a public servant, but we also know that a huge number of these people are the people sitting around saying, computer says no. Oh, sorry, computer says no. Thanks for your inquiry. And while the total number of people in the Australian public service, this is the federal public service, has gone up by 45%, geez, they've got a few pay rises in the past 20 years because basically 472%, basically a multiple of 10x's have gone into this. This is why we are in what is called a structural deficit. The government has baked in guaranteed spending on endless new programs or pay rises. And again, I don't want the Australian government to automatically just tomorrow go back to where it was in 2020, but 2005. But we need to all learn together that it's not about the distraction. It's not about the speech that the Treasurer delivers. It's not about the shiny graphics or the what's in it for you calculator that'll be on all of those websites. As a machine, the thing is wildly out of control. I've got a couple of other ones here too. Now, that is the cost of federal public servants. This is federal, state and local public servants. Have a look at this for a blowout. 1.6 million 20 years ago is now 2.5 million. The population has grown by 33%, but the number of people working for state, federal or local government, it's up 56%. And what about the cost? From $21 billion 20 years ago, federal, state, local public servants, $232 billion, up 555%. And perfect way of maybe summing all of this up for you is that today we compared the number of federal government organisations, departments basically, that existed in 2004 and 2005, and we compared that to 2024 and 2025. Are you sitting down? 20 years ago, there were 710 government organisations. Now there are 1,322. Literally, even with, we tried this today, to put a list of those graphics, it would go beyond the end of the show, even if we were showing them really quickly. 86% explosion in the number of government departments. In summary, the population has gone up 33.5%. But the federal government income tax, adjusting for inflation, has gone up for 96%. The tax intake is up 99%. The total spending is up $128.5 billion. The federal public service has blown out by 45%. The cost of those people, 427%. And government organisations are up 86%. That is an awful lot of rubber duckies.